Alexandros Megas, the prince who became a god. Have you ever wondered what makes someone worthy of being called a god among men? We're not talking about distant myths or legends, but about a young man who turned his name into a synonym for power, intelligence, and ambition. Alexander the Great, the prince who dared to challenge the limits of the known world and became an almost divine figure. But what if I told you his story is far more than battles and conquests? It's filled with life lessons, twists, and moments of wisdom that could change the way you see the world. Get ready, because today we'll dive into the fascinating journey of a man born to rule, who tamed the impossible and built a legacy that echoes to this day. What he learned from philosophers, kings, and even a legendary horse might surprise you. So hold tight, because this isn't just a story, it's a journey. And by the end of it, you might discover that, just like Alexander, you too carry limitless potential. Born into greatness. There's something magical about beginning a story at the cradle of a legend. Alexander, or Alexandros, as some prefer to call him, was born in 356 BC in a small Macedonian city called Pella. But don't be fooled by the size of the place. Greatness flowed through the boy's veins, inherited from his remarkable parents. His father, Philip II, wasn't just a king. He was a natural strategist, a man who saw possibilities where others saw only limitations. He reformed the Macedonian army, creating the legendary phalanx. His mother, Olympias, was no less impressive. With a fiery temperament and mystical beliefs, she instilled in Alexander an ambition that seemed boundless. From a young age, Alexander was no ordinary child. While other kids were content playing in the courtyard, he displayed an insatiable curiosity about the world around him. It was as if every question he asked held a spark of the conqueror he would become. Olympias, ever attentive, made sure to fuel this thirst. Fascinating stories recount how she told him he was descended from Achilles and Hercules, mythological figures the boy idolized. Imagine growing up believing the blood of demigods ran through your veins. It's no wonder his dreams were so grand. Philip, on the other hand, wasn't just a father who gave instructions. He led by example. It's said that Alexander often watched him in action, leading armies or forging political alliances. And here lies a valuable lesson: the power of practice. If you have children or young people around you, remember that they learn far more from what they see than what they hear. Show courage, ethics, and determination, and they will grow up believing these values are natural. But not everything was harmonious in the Macedonian household. Like all great stories, there were tensions. Philip and Olympias, though united in shaping Alexander's destiny, were complex figures full of differences. Some say these conflicts only shaped the resilient character of the future conqueror. After all, those who grow up among strong personalities learn early how to navigate turbulent waters, a skill that would prove crucial on his journey. Another curious detail about his childhood was his interaction with the elite of his time. Although raised in a palace, Alexander wasn't isolated. He played with children from all walks of life and listened to stories from diverse cultures. This might seem trivial, but it planted the seeds of empathy and respect for other peoples, a cornerstone of his future policies. Have you ever thought about expanding your knowledge of other cultures? Reading books like 1001 Nights or watching documentaries about global traditions might be a great start. Thus, Alexander grew up, with Philip's greatness as his example and Olympias's intensity as his fuel. He was a young man who already seemed to bear the weight of destiny, but with a glint in his eye that hinted he was just getting started. And like every great story, the beginning is only the tip of the iceberg. Something extraordinary happened during his adolescence, something that would forever mark his path. The legend of Bucephalus. They say destiny likes to announce itself in moments of great challenge. For Alexander, that moment came when he was just 13. It was an ordinary day in Macedonia until a wild horse was brought to court. The horse was magnificent, with a gleaming black mane and a strength that seemed uncontrollable. Its name? Bucephalus. Many tried to ride it, but all failed. The men declared it impossible to tame, but Alexander saw something no one else did. As he observed the horse, he realized it wasn't wild, but frightened. It was the shadow of its own body that caused its fear. With this insight, Alexander asked his father for permission to try taming it. Picture the scene. A teenager facing an animal that intimidated even the most experienced soldiers. Philip, curious, allowed him to try. And there, under the watchful eyes of everyone, Alexander gave the world a glimpse of his brilliance. He turned Bucephalus toward the sun so the shadow would disappear. Then, with calm and patience, he earned the horse's trust, speaking softly and showing he was not a threat. Finally, in a movement that left the crowd in awe, he mounted the horse and guided it as if they were one. Philip, impressed, declared, "My son, seek a kingdom worthy of you, for Macedonia is too small." Words that would echo throughout Alexander's life, shaping his worldview. This fascinating story isn't just about a horse. It's a lesson in how seemingly insurmountable challenges often have simple solutions if we pay attention. Alexander didn't stand out through brute force, but through emotional intelligence. And that's something we can all apply. The next time you face a problem, ask yourself, am I seeing the whole picture or just the shadow? Sometimes, the solution lies in changing your perspective. Bucephalus became more than a horse. He was a symbol of courage and partnership. Together, Alexander and Bucephalus faced battles, conquered territories, and inspired legions. Some say their bond was so strong that Bucephalus could sense his master's emotions and respond instinctively. This reminds us of the importance of the connections we cultivate, whether with people or even the animals that share our journey. Thus, Bucephalus and Alexander became inseparable. The legend of the boy who tamed the impossible spread, reinforcing the aura of greatness that already surrounded him. But Alexander's life was just beginning. With the determination of someone who turned obstacles into stepping stones, he would soon find another mentor, someone who would expand his horizon even further and plant the seeds of his genius. Aristotle's pupil. When the quest for wisdom becomes an obsession, masters appear along the way. For Alexander, there could be no greater mentor than Aristotle. Yes, the very philosopher who shaped much of Western thought was called upon by Philip II to educate his son. This decision, more than strategic, was an invaluable gift. After all, who better to teach a future king about the world than someone who understood its complexities like no other? Aristotle didn't limit himself to traditional subjects. He taught Alexander how to see beyond the obvious. His lessons covered science, philosophy, ethics, politics, and even medicine. Imagine the scene, the two walking through the gardens of Mieza, discussing how the stars guide navigators or how virtue is the key to a fulfilled life. Alexander absorbed it all like a sponge, each lesson feeding his curiosity and broadening his worldview. One fascinating story from this period is that Aristotle gave Alexander an annotated copy of Homer's Iliad, Alexander would carry it with him on all his campaigns, using it as a manual for leadership and courage. And what about you? Is there something you carry as a source of inspiration? It could be a book, a piece of advice, or even a song that lifts you in moments of doubt. Having something that anchors you to your values is essential, just as it was for him. The relationship between teacher and student also offers a valuable lesson: the importance of mentors. Aristotle didn't just pass on knowledge, he challenged Alexander to think critically. And this is something we can seek in our own lives. Who are the people that push you to be better? A mentor could be a teacher, an experienced friend, or even an author whose words resonate with you. Wisdom is everywhere. You just need to be open to receiving it. Another interesting point is that Aristotle wasn't just a theorist. He encouraged Alexander to apply what he learned. For instance, teaching him medicine wasn't to make him a doctor, but to help him understand human fragility and become a more empathetic leader. It's like learning psychology today. Even if you're not a psychologist, understanding the emotions of those around you can transform relationships and even careers. Thus, Alexander left Mieza with an arsenal of knowledge few could match. But he knew that theory would only become power through practice. And that's exactly what he pursued, applying everything he had learned, leading troops, and facing real challenges. He was ready to prove that wisdom wasn't a luxury, but a weapon. Early leadership. Leadership, they say, is not learned solely from books, but also in the arena of life. For Alexander, this truth revealed itself early on. While many young men his age were just beginning to discover their abilities, he was already taking on responsibilities that would shape the destiny of Macedonia. It was as if the weight of the crown was a natural extension of his head, even before he became king. At just 16 years old, with Philip away on military campaigns, Alexander was entrusted with governing Macedonia in his father's absence. Imagine the pressure, a teenager making decisions about politics and national security. Yet he not only survived the experience, he thrived. When a rebellion broke out during Philip's absence, Alexander led troops against the insurgents, defeating them with impeccable strategy and founding his first city, Alexandropolis, an impressive feat that showcased his natural aptitude for command. This moment also taught him a lesson he would carry for life: the importance of acting with confidence, even when challenges seem overwhelming. Here's a practical example. Think of something you've been postponing out of fear of failure. It could be presenting a project, having a difficult conversation, or even changing careers. Remember, fear is just a shadow, like Bucephalus. Face it, and you'll uncover the strength that's always been there. Alexander's confidence didn't come from nowhere. From an early age, Philip placed him in situations where he had to prove his worth. He fought alongside soldiers, learning not only about battle tactics, but also about human nature, knowing how to inspire others, how to turn fear into courage. These were skills he refined with each battle. And this reminds us that leadership isn't about control. It's about inspiration. Another fascinating aspect is how Alexander applied what he had learned from Aristotle. He understood that leadership wasn't just about winning battles, but about winning hearts. Before any confrontation, he studied his opponents, seeking to understand their weaknesses and motivations. In many cases, he offered agreements before resorting to force. This ability to merge wisdom with action is something we can all apply. Before making important decisions, ask yourself, am I reacting or responding strategically? Thus, even as a youth, Alexander was already more than just Philip's son. He was becoming a symbol of greatness and determination. Each victory solidified his position not only as the legitimate heir to the throne, but also to the vision of an empire. Yet his ambition wasn't confined by Macedonia's borders. He looked beyond, to lands that promised glory and challenges that would define him as the greatest military leader of all time. Conqueror's path. Greatness was never built in comfort zones. Alexander knew this from a young age, and his journey as a conqueror began with a clear purpose: to unite Greece. But it wasn't just through force. He was a natural strategist, a visionary who understood that an effective leader conquers through respect as much as through the sword. After Philip's death, Alexander took the throne and quickly showed the world that Macedonia would not just be a nation, it would be the heart of a global empire. His first mission was to consolidate control over the Greek city-states. Despite resistance, especially from Thebes, he succeeded in uniting the region under his command. It's fascinating to think of a young man, barely in his 20s, navigating the intricate politics and conflicts of a fragmented land. He led not just with power, but with a vision that inspired even the most skeptical. Here lies a powerful lesson. When facing challenges, a clear purpose can transform even the greatest difficulties into victories. After unifying Greece, Alexander turned his sights to the most powerful empire of the time, Persia. It was a vast and seemingly impenetrable territory, ruled by Darius III. But for Alexander, challenges were never reasons to retreat. They were invitations to push boundaries. He crossed the Hellespont with an army of around 50,000 men, facing numerically superior forces with a blend of courage, strategy, and determination. A fascinating example of his brilliance was the Battle of Issus. Despite being outnumbered, Alexander used the terrain to his advantage and led a direct attack on the center of the Persian forces, forcing Darius to flee. The victory was not just military, but symbolic. It showed the world that Alexander was unstoppable. Imagine how this lesson applies to your life. When facing seemingly insurmountable obstacles, ask yourself, how can I turn disadvantages into advantages? Beyond battles, Alexander was also a cultural architect. Wherever he went, he didn't destroy. He built. He founded cities such as the legendary Alexandria, which became centers of culture and learning. He encouraged the fusion of local traditions with Hellenic culture, creating a legacy that transcended borders. It's like when you learn something new and apply that knowledge in different areas of your life. The ability to integrate ideas and perspectives is one of the greatest strengths anyone can have. But Alexander wasn't content with what he had already achieved. He ventured further, crossing deserts and mountains, always seeking the next challenge. He believed that glory was not just in the destination, but in the journey itself. And it was this journey that transformed him into not just a leader, but a symbol of ambition and determination that resonates to this day. Yet there was something about his leadership that went beyond strategy. It was a wisdom he carried, even in the most unexpected interactions, as we will see next. Anecdotes of wisdom. Sometimes, true power lies not in commanding armies or conquering lands, but in recognizing the strength of simplicity. Alexander, despite being one of the most powerful men of his time, valued wisdom, especially when it came from unexpected sources. One of the most fascinating stories illustrating this is his encounter with Diogenes, the Cynic philosopher. Picture the scene. The young conqueror, surrounded by his entourage, meets Diogenes lounging in the sun, utterly unbothered. Curious, Alexander approaches and asks if there's anything he can do for the philosopher. Diogenes' response is both straightforward and disarming. Yes, step aside, you're blocking the sun. To many, this might have seemed insulting, but Alexander, with his open mind, laughed at the audacity and replied, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." This exchange, beyond showing his respect for wisdom, teaches us that true power lies in appreciating different perspectives. Another curious episode involves a challenge Alexander posed to his soldiers during a campaign. After an exhausting victory, he asked each soldier to carry as many treasures as they could. When Alexander took his share, he chose nothing but water. Inspired by his gesture, his men abandoned their riches to follow his example. This story reminds us that leading is, above all, about inspiring through action. In your life, what can you do to lead through gestures rather than words? Despite his power, Alexander was a man who cultivated curiosity and was always willing to listen. On one occasion, upon encountering a group of priests in a remote temple, he became deeply interested in their rituals and beliefs, asking to learn more. This approach not only strengthened diplomatic ties, but also expanded his worldview. It teaches us that learning never stops. Whether by exploring new cultures, reading a book, or even listening to someone with a different perspective, every moment is an opportunity for growth. His appreciation for wisdom was also evident in how he treated his own men. Alexander knew his soldiers by name and often joined them for meals. He believed that a leader who understands the hearts of his followers can achieve anything. This isn't just true in war. Think about the relationships in your daily life. Understanding the people around you, colleagues, friends, family, can completely transform how you connect and solve challenges. These fascinating stories are just fragments of a man who was as much a strategist as he was a thinker. Alexander understood that a leader's legacy isn't measured only by the lands they conquer, but by the ideas and values they leave behind. And as he continued his journey, founding cities and pushing limits, one question always lingered. How would a man so young and ambitious handle the weight of his conquests? Legacy of cities. When we think of legacy, many imagine statues and monuments, but Alexander left something even grander: entire cities. During his lifetime, he founded over 20 cities, the most famous being Alexandria in Egypt. What makes this achievement so fascinating isn't just the number of cities, but what they represented. Alexander didn't see these foundations merely as strategic points. He saw them as cultural bridges, uniting Hellenism with local traditions. Alexandria, for instance, was designed to be a center of knowledge and culture. Under Alexander's influence, it became home to the greatest library of the ancient world, attracting scholars from all corners of the known world. Imagine living in a place where the greatest minds of the time gathered to exchange ideas and build the knowledge that would shape the future. It's a reminder that the true power of a civilization lies not only in its military conquests, but in its cultural and intellectual impact. Another fascinating aspect is how Alexander named many cities after himself, but not with the intent of self-glorification. He wanted these cities to be an extension of his vision, places where different cultures could coexist. This teaches us something valuable. The legacy we leave isn't about how we're remembered, but about the impact we have on others' lives. So, what are you building in your life that will outlast your time here? These cities weren't just symbols of power. They were also a testament to Alexander's empathy and strategic vision. Rather than imposing a single culture, he encouraged integration. He hired local architects, respected traditions, and even promoted marriages between his soldiers and women from conquered lands. He was a leader who understood that unity is more powerful than domination. It's like any group. The more you respect and value differences, the stronger it becomes. Alexander's legacy extended far beyond his death. His cities continued to thrive, some growing into major metropolises that still exist today. They stand as a testament to his ability to look to the future and build something that transcended his own time. This makes us reflect. What are we doing today that will continue to impact the world 100 years from now? Small actions, like teaching someone something valuable or creating something meaningful, can have effects you might not even imagine. And as Alexander founded cities and expanded his empire, he carried with him a question that lingered throughout his journey. How can someone who has achieved so much balance the desire for more with the weight of their accomplishments? His next steps would lead him to explore the depths of his humanity and perhaps challenge the very limits of destiny itself. And so ends the story of Alexander the Great, a man who not only conquered lands, but also hearts, ideas, and an eternal place in history. But now I ask you, what are you doing to leave your legacy? You may not be founding cities or leading armies, but every action you take has the power to impact those around you. Alexander showed us that true power lies in balancing courage with wisdom, action with empathy. So why not apply that to your own life? What challenges can you face head-on? What skills can you develop or share with the world? Just as Alexander found inspiration in mentors like Aristotle, who are the mentors you can seek out? And remember, stories like this are more than curiosities. They are invitations to reflect, learn, and grow. If you found this journey fascinating, imagine the other incredible stories we still have to tell. Will you really miss out? Subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and join us in uncovering more myths, mysteries, and fascinating lessons from history. Who knows? The next great conqueror you'll learn to admire might just be yourself. Stay curious.